afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet meeting, 14th of January. I think everybody in the room is aware of the fire instructions, evacuation procedures. A reminder to press the button in front of you so that folk watching online hear us as well as ourselves. I welcome the Chair of Scrutiny, Councillor Mike Brown. Evenings. Apologies for absence. Apologies. Okay, so we'll now move on to minutes, and there's two sets of minutes to agree as a correct record. Those on the 10th of December. Is it your wish that I sign these as a correct record? Getting nods. Is that a formal vote we need to take? Yes, we need to take a formal. Those in favour? Yes, you can second it if you'd like. Very much. Sorry about that. Jumped the gun a bit. I now have to sign those. Move on to the minutes of the 17th of December. If there's a seconder for the minutes, I'll vote as a correct record. Mark, seconding the minutes there?
I didn't.
No, she didn't attend. Okay. Steve's seconding. Those in favour? Okay. Find those as a correct record. They're the official records. Those with a bit of air. Doing the folder just there. Okay. So we now move on to next item is declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest on any of the agenda items in front of you? Don't think so. Okay, so we move on to matters referred from Scrutiny Committee in accordance with Scrutiny rules. So it says no items have been received. Now, is that correct? Agenda. Did it say that? Beg your pardon. I'm looking at the wrong document. Okay, I invite the chairman of Scrutiny to present his report and say whatever he likes. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the invitation to say whatever I like, which is appropriate because I had written out an aid memoir for tonight and I've forgotten to bring it with me, so I'm going to have to busk it, which can be dangerous, as you know, when I get into full flow. The sole item that's actually been referred from the December the 8th meeting of Scrutiny is the paper you've got in front of you, which is an update from a work and a task and finish group that we established as part of our work programme to look into developing a youth strategy. The job of that task and finish group is not to write a youth strategy, it's to feed in themes and ideas appropriate for Cabinet who actually have the responsibility on this. Might be more interesting than what I was saying, Lydia. It probably was. So the report in front of you, as I say, was an update from that group. I'd like to thank Councillor Helen Cliff, who chaired and led that group, and the other members of Scrutiny who sat on it. And you've got the report in front of you. I'm not going to go through it line by line, but as you'll see, it looked at a range of issues that particularly impact on young people in our communities across the borough. Many of them, of course, cross over into other parts of our communities, but clearly the brief here was to look at particular issues facing young people. And the report then goes on to talk in terms of what our next steps should be. Now, whilst this group was meeting and formulating its ideas around these various themes, of course, the government relatively recently in this process announced its national youth strategy as part of its Get Britain Working white paper. And that is a 10-year plan, and it sets out a range of priorities, many of which are picked up in the work that the Task and Finish group had already done. But I think if you actually compare the priorities set out in the national strategy with the themes that are in the feedback from the Task and Finish group, you'll see there are additional things that have come out that are very specific, perhaps to our borough and our community of young people. So the view of the Task and Finish group was that whilst it's quite right that we align with that new national approach, and the Borough Council will obviously want to work with that and work with its partners in DWP over that we should still have as our objective, as set out in the corporate strategy, developing our own policy and looking at perhaps some of those areas which aren't particularly part of the national strategy, which has some very specific focuses within it. So the report sets out some proposed actions which are set out on page 15, and then goes on to a recommendation that the key recommendation is that the Cabinet is asked to note the work undertaken so far, and that the Task and Finish group will continue its work. And that work will be around the 5 themes set out in the actions, which are oversight, within the context of the work going on within the Borough Council on developing a strategy, active engagement with the national agenda, which is clearly very important, representing Melton in national forums and consultations, because the national strategy is going to have a range of opportunities for input in different ways. Regular monitoring and updates. I suppose the polite way of saying that is to be a critical friend, to make sure that we're on this as an issue as a council, and alignment and advocacy. And that's about making sure that we're aligned with the national strategy, but also advocating for Melton needs where they aren't being covered by that national strategy. So those are the recommendations. There are additionally, following that, a range of comments from which were made by scrutiny. I suppose the most important comment that was made by scrutiny is we welcome the update we received from the Task and Finish group and entirely endorsed the recommendations they are making, and we hope that Cabinet will do likewise. The only comment, and I'll conclude with this, you'll be glad to hear, that I'll just highlight, and mainly because it came from me, is we were very alive to the fact that one of the issues with young people is they don't stay young forever, and all delays have the risk of missing opportunities to develop strategies and approaches to benefit our young people. It's too late for somebody who's 15 now if we actually manage to develop a strategy by 2035. So time of the essence, and we shouldn't miss opportunities to actually move forward on this agenda, because every day, month, year that we fail to do that, we're actually failing our young people in our communities. Thank you, Chair. I'll obviously take questions if there are any.
Thanks, Mike. As you were saying that, in that last bit, what went through my mind immediately was the COVID generation. That they're the ones that missed out on so much, and if you miss that moment, so much damage can be done further down the line. And on the flip side of that, the other thing that went through my mind was what we've been discussing about cultural strategies and other things, cross-cutting things within the council. So, sorry, that's my fourpenneth. Sharon, yes, please.
It looks really good, but I was also thinking like the youth strategy, have the youth had a bit of a voice in it themselves? Because we're all really good at saying what we think they want and need and stuff like that, but it's actually listening to the youth themselves. And this isn't really sort of anything to do with this, but it will affect the youth. Is they've got the biggest pay rise that they've ever had but now people are starting to say they're not going to employ them because it's the same price to employ older people that have got more experience. So, you know, there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to the youth.
I think there's a couple of things from the national strategy. I'm monitoring and really interested in the apprenticeships and how our district can take advantage of the 50,000 fully funded apprenticeships that are supposed to be coming from government, and how we can take advantage of that with some of our local employers for youth, because that's specifically targeted at young people. So I think somehow that intertwines with our youth strategy would be really important, and as a district how we can get ahead of the curve with that and make sure some of that structure's there to support them, because I know people before have had difficulties engaging Brooksby to offer the education element of those apprenticeships that local businesses have wanted to offer, and that's just from personal experiences with some local businesses that have tried that. The only other thing I was going to just question, was there discussion? I see it says let's focus on 10 to 18s, but obviously in the national definition of young people, it's up to 25 if they have a disability. So I just wondered if there was discussion about that, obviously, because we're still looking and pushing for Discovery to potentially purchase the building in town. And that's where the focus of all of us wanting to support young people with disabilities potentially getting into the workforce, you know, at some point. And certainly I know I've worked with a number of young people that are still in education at 2021 because they might have missed years of education because of mental health or physical issues or bereavement in the family for lots of different reasons. So I didn't know if that had been discussed, Chair.
Yeah, but can I pick up on the two points? Then obviously there are other questions. The task and finish group has not at this stage engaged, and it's probably not appropriate for that task and finish group to do that with young people directly, but that clearly needs to be part of how we approach this as a council. And I was trying to find it in there, and I'm sure I read it in the report, or it may have been in the debate, that needs to be a further step in terms of engaging with and involving young people. And to answer Councillor Cox's question, it was touched on, but you know, but nevertheless, the focus was, it was suggested again, it's this problem of how broad can you make it and be effective. So it's not being disregarded what you're saying, but you know, the feeling was at this stage that focus should be on the 10 to 18 age group. But obviously it's for you know, the council to make decisions about whether it needs to broaden that scope or not.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, most young people, they have very, very supportive families, you know, and they grow up and they have happy childhoods, and they grow up to be happy adults. But we know that a lot of youngsters are not in good families, you know, and as well, we have children who are in care. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, you know, and I'm just wondering, you know, if we've looked at those children and the young people who need a bit extra support because they're not getting it from their families. Thank you.
Just in response to Councillor Cumbers, I mean, I think you're right. And again, one of the comments was made is that we've hollowed out to some extent those engagement services of various sorts that used to be available for that purpose. I know there are other groups, charities, etc., that fill that role to, you know, as well as they can and do very well in that respect. But there is a gap there. But I think there was a bit of an issue, and I don't think that's in the report. But of course, we're Melton Borough Council. And some of these areas quite properly form part of the remit of other authorities like the county council, etc. And we can only go so far in terms of what we do in terms of direct work. Of course, when we're a unitary authority, perhaps indeed, of course, that would be a different story. But at this point in time, we have to be realistic about what scope we have within our powers and our remit and our budgets, dare I say, Councillor Cox looking on, and to contribute towards supporting our young people, but not necessarily trying to provide the services that aren't being provided by other bodies that should.
Perhaps the way we can provide some hooks is to make certain that there's a cross-reference to other work that's going on in the council in any case, with respect to the stockyard and our working with the college, or even criticising the college. You know, it doesn't matter. It's a fair enough discussion about the items that you were mentioning, Sarah. That'd be the way to do it. So yes, yes, please, Margaret.
Yes, going on from what sort of councillor has said, perhaps the role of Melton Borough Council is being that linchpin between the bigger authorities who actually provide the services, and we can direct the youths to that and then make sure that service fits what the youths actually need. So I think that's probably one of the main objectives. I may well be wrong here, but that's how I see it working, because we do not provide those services ourselves, but we can actually be that linchpin between them.
Because I think exactly, and there's, I mean, just as one example of where there's a potential interface, you know, we may not provide youth services as such. We do provide a housing service, and our officers working that so will encounter issues, and quite rightly would want to then, you know, be channeling towards the appropriate bodies, you know, to provide assistance and support. So I think there are lots of areas where, as a council, we are going to be identifying issues and want to actually be part of the, you know, at the very least, the communication process that tries to actually get the right support and assistance in place.
I'm going to suggest that we note there's a recommendation. I'm going to suggest that we not simply note but endorse the conclusions so far of the scrutiny committee, and thank them and the subgroup for all the good work that's gone on. So I shall propose that. I hope somebody got that minuted in some form. I'm getting the nods. So can I have a second? So Mark, everyone seconding it. That's excellent. 3 2 to 6. All those in favour? None against. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 5. I'm going to pass across to the lead member for that, and whichever officers are appropriate for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you can see from the recommendations, the Council has a statutory duty to identify and manage contaminated land. The strategy reflects best practice and aligns with national planning policy, and builds on 2 decades of experience where the planning process has effectively managed brownfield site remediation, reducing the risk to human health. The Contaminated Land Strategy updates a document last adopted in 2000 and brings the Council in line with current statutory guidance and risk-based practice. It focuses on protecting public health by managing contamination pathways rather than a necessarily full remediation, providing clarity for developers and reducing the Council's legal and financial risk. This strategy supports safe redevelopment of brownfield land and enables regeneration while protecting human health and the environment. The aims are to protect human health and environment, ensure land is suitable for current and future use, promote brownfield redevelopments, and provide clear guidance to all stakeholders. It establishes collaborative framework with the Environment Agency and other statutory bodies to ensure effective risk management and enforcement. The policy closely ties into our planning process, as you have no doubt noticed. It goes into some depth. The revised strategy incorporates a revised risk assessment framework that delivers proportionate evidence-based evaluation in line with the 2012 statutory guidance. Also, a more user-friendly layout with clear guidance for developers and landowners, from individual householders to major developers. It also formalisation of current practice, ensuring compliance with modern legislative, technical and British standard requirements, including the latest expectations for conceptual site models. With regard to being user-friendly, the draft I originally reviewed had page numbers. The one in front of us it doesn't have those. So let's turn the page. I would like to add that as part of the recommendations that page numbers are included as per the contents page to ensure it is more user-friendly, as the officer had a great deal of time and effort to make it easy to be used as a reference document. So I would like to thank the Environment Health Officer, Craig Howard, for this excellent revised document. So I'm happy to propose recommendations 2.1 to 2.4 with the addition of a 2.5 to include page numbers in the final document as per the contents page to aid the ease of use.
Thank you, Margaret.
Mm.
I'll second that as a block and echo your thanks to the officer. And while I'm about it, I should apologise. I didn't mention that our monitoring officer has joined us on Teams. So he's with us in the room. Sorry, Clive, I didn't welcome you. I should have done. My apologies. And if you wish to intervene at any point, Ed will see your hand go up. But you're unsighted to me a little bit. Okay, open it up for discussion. Not Clive, but the item in question. Yes, please, Pat.
These contaminated sites, is there a map somewhere showing them? And how they're contaminated? And one of the reasons I ask is I can remember a few years back that Lake Terrace was contaminated, and there was some sort of suggestion that it was connected to the Thor nuclear missiles, which were used during the war at the airfield.
Thor was after the war. Yeah, it was during the Cold War. Yeah, we didn't have Thors during the war. Otherwise, we might not have had the doodle bugs and the V2s. Yeah,
But certainly after, and they were stored there. And as I say, there were rumours about the contamination at Lake Terrace was connected.
that's interesting because I thought they were all up at the airfield on the way to Dalby. Yeah. I didn't realise they were only down there, but that's interesting. But to answer the question, anyway, you had a question not about maps.
Personally, I'm not sure if there is a map, but there is a sort of very concise list of where all the items are. The contaminated land. It might be useful to put them on a map with a grid.
So.
That could be a task going forward. Thank you.
So, there is a reference to the public register in the policy, which we have to keep. So that gives some form of identification. So it is referred to quite a number of points in the policy. So I don't know that it's definitely backed up with a map, but there is a register of the land which does identify them by reference to address and I think grid reference.
Clive, please come back, Pat.
Yeah, because I would think that the residents, it would help, and of course it will especially help with planning. To know in advance, rather than having to go searching to see whether a land is still contaminated or has been contaminated.
We've heard what's said about that, and we can certainly follow that up. We're not. We can still approve the document as it is, and maybe it will form an amendment later on as appropriate. What do you say, Margaret?
I was just going to say the fact that the planning work very closely with the Environment Health Officer, and the Environment Health Officer have those concise details together with the grids. But I do agree it would be quite good to see it actually on a map.
Yeah, I think because the public needs to know, and possible developers and landowners. Yes.
We'll take that away. Any other points on the document? I think it's a really good piece of work. So we've moved and seconded the recommendations with the addition of a 2.5 to add the page numbers to the main thrust. Okay, so those in favour, please show. And so that's agreed. Thank you very much. And somebody will pass their thanks on to the preparer of the document. So that's Craig, isn't it? Right. Okay, so we now move on to item 6, which is air quality strategy. The same duo working on this one. We're making you work tonight, Margaret.
I know, thank you. Yes, air quality strategy. Air pollution has increasingly been recognised as the #1 environment health threat to public health in the UK. The development of our strategy has involved detailed assessment of pollutant sources, exposure risks, and future projections, including the benefit of planned infrastructure projects. This strategy sets out the overarching framework of how the Council will manage and improve air quality alongside ongoing statutory monitoring and reporting. Developed in line with DEFRA requirements, it embraces air quality considerations into planning, embeds air quality consideration to planning, transport and public health decisions. This strategy builds on historic improvements while providing a forward-looking, health-focused approach to protecting residents and supporting sustainable growth. As you will no doubt have seen in the strategy, there are close ties to planning. It includes at Appendix 1, the Environmental Health Advice Note to local plans on PM2 levels and implications for employment land allocation, and at Appendix 2 on the need to undertake air quality assessment as part of the planning process. I am sure you've all read the mitigation measures on page 205 to 208 of the document pack, which includes building design, heating systems, planting of trees and green spaces and green walls and roofing, buffer zones, building orientation, to name a few. It is imperative our planning department and the environment team continue to work closely together. Like the previous item, this is another one that hasn't got, I'd like to thank Craig Howard, our environmental health officer. And also this one does have page numbers, so I don't need to add the extra sort of recommendation. So I'm happy to recommend at 2.1 of the report, and thanks again for the excellent document.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm happy to second that. Anybody got any contributions to make or questions? Yes, please, Pat.
Yeah, a lot of this is about the harm caused by vehicles. And there's a lot in here about persuading people to walk or use public transport. I think that's a bit sort of airy-fairy. People aren't going to want to leave their cars. But I do understand in Germany that the car ownership is much higher than it is here, but car usage is much lower because the public transport is so good. And we just don't have that. I mean, there have been some recent improvements, and I know as a non-driver, I know how useful they have been. Locally, I'm talking about, but until we get a better transport system, we're never going to get people out of their cars, and I think perhaps that should be some sort of priority. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Any other comments? Yes, Sharon, please do.
Following on from the buses, the other obvious is cycle lanes. We don't have cycle lanes, so people aren't going to cycle. And on page 170, there's things like stop and start traffic. Well, how our traffic lights run in town, I'll say no more. But things like that, and our commercial and market activity. Well, we're a market town, so but I think the report's good, but just those things that we wouldn't want to change.
Always an element of idealism and ambition, and it comes up against reality. of how things are now, and making that transition, making that change, is the challenge for all of us, isn't it? Really? Yes, Pat, you wanted to say something else?
Yeah, and just to repeat, actually, what a thorough document this is. The research that's gone into it's absolutely superb. But yeah, and there are dangers there that I know now that I didn't know before. And it makes me wonder about sort of even wandering around the town when it's so dangerous, a dangerous place to be.
Move on to, is this got something to do with maintaining order at council? It says noise control policy. Do you think, is this another one of yours, Margaret? This the dynamic duo again?
It's my last one for the evening.
Yeah,
Thank
good.
you. Again, thank you for such an extensive and helpful policy that provides a clear, evidence-based approach to protecting residents' health and well-being, safeguarding residents and outdoor amenity, and supporting sustainable development. The adoption of this policy ensures compliance with relevant legislation, British standards and national guidance, helping the Council maintain high-quality living environments while facilitating responsible growth. The noise control policy provides a clear, proportionate framework for managing noise across the borough, grounded in long-established statutory nuisance law and modern good practice. Its purpose is to protect residents' health and amenity while supporting businesses, community activity, and cultural events through early engagement and practical noise management. The policy promotes prevention through good design and behavioural change, improving consistency, reducing complaints, and ensuring legal, robust, and effective decision making. Again, this policy goes into some depth with regard to control of delivery, servicing, and operational noise. This chapter provides a clear and defensible framework for environmental health officers and development management to prevent and control such impacts. That could go into the aims of the council as set out on page 352 of the agenda pack, but I'm sure you're all familiar with them. Again, I said this is very in-depth policy with a huge amount of information, but the draft I originally reviewed was very user-friendly as it had both contents page and page numbers, which I found extremely useful when you're thumbing through things to look for a particular document. So I'm happy to propose the recommendations at 2.1 to 2.3, plus the additional recommendation at 2.4 to include page numbers in the final document, as per the contents page to aid ease of use. Thank you.
I'm very happy to second that. In addition to the 2.4, just a comment from myself. Obviously, noise control is a bit of a hot issue in this borough, and it's something that we're working on now, and we're cooperating with some of our parish colleagues because of concerns they have. And it'll be interesting to me to be told by the officers to what extent this policy helps with that process. Not tonight necessarily, but it'll whether unless you wish to make any comments, Lydia, at this. Yes, please do.
I think it's very supportive, and the officer that's been referenced, Craig, when he was going through this with me, described that the last time it was updated, Brian Adams was in the charts. Now it takes account of modern advancements, techno noise, but our way of monitoring that has also been updated as well. So it's brought it right up to date. The other point is worth noting is it will really help in terms of working collaboratively with event organisers to support the aims and objectives, and where he was previously, it reduced the number of complaints significantly that was received from the local authority.
With that in mind, I think it'll be helpful in the near future to communicate the fact of this document to the people we're working with currently, and with some sort of summary of what you've just said, really, if you see what I mean. Any other comments? Oh yes, who had the hand up first? Pat, was it, and then Sharon? We'll talk at the same time.
I think this could possibly add about the busking, which is noise control, because they are they do cause a public nuisance for residents, shoppers, visitors, as well as businesses in the town, and some of it is not pleasant noise. So, on to Pat.
They can go over the top a bit, can't they? Because in my days of the wax cylinder, people had a harmonica and a guitar and no amplification. It was just talent. Well, it was for me anyway. I earned a few bob. So there we go. Do you want to add some more, Pat?
If I may, because busking can be a nice thing. It can be nice background, and we've had one person who's been there for years, and people like him. I won't mention his name, but you all know who I'm talking about. So we wouldn't. It's not about excluding busking. It's about controlling it, and so we're already sort of pushing to get a license, so that everybody knows where they stand, and obviously before we introduce a license, Sharon actually has done a huge amount of recording, and I don't know how she measures the decibels, but she does, and so hopefully we will have a really good busking, that people will enjoy, but without it making people, the shops and the businesses, angry with their blocked doorways and just too much noise. Thank you.
So shall we move to a vote now? It's been moved and seconded with the addition of the page numbers. So those in favour, please show. Is it on this item? Yes, go on then.
I beg your pardon. This is about fireworks, and anybody who's got animals will know how upset they are when there are fireworks going off. And I understand that mostly with fireworks, the noise is added, and there is a thing in this. On page 294, it mentions low noise fireworks, and I think we really should be encouraging people to use low noise fireworks or fireworks with no noise. We all like the spectacle, don't we, to look at, but we don't need the banging, so if we can really go for low noise or even no noise, perhaps we can be encouraging people to use them. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. So we will move to a vote now. All those in favour of not those, yeah, we voted. Please come back. Yes, sorry.
Yes, thank you. I think if you note it at 10.5 of the fireworks and explosive devices, organisers are encouraged to use low noise fireworks. And I think that's really good. So we need to get that message across, don't we? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to item 8, which is over to Sarah, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the report before you is a summary of all the work that has been done, but also sets some agenda items for the work that needs to be done in the coming year in relation to health and safety. I think as a cabinet, you'd all recognise the massive strides we've made in terms of health and safety across our assets, not only in our role as an employer, but also as a landlord and as a residential landlord as well, and as a public body over the last 2 years. Certainly as portfolio holder, the improvements I've seen in health and safety approach by the council have been phenomenal. And a lot of that has to be credited to the health and safety officer of the council, Jo Lees. All credit to her. But I'd also like to thank Michelle, who gives Jo the clout to ensure that departments listen to her, because health and safety is often seen as quite frustrating for many departments. And I am fully aware, having met with Jo on numerous occasions, that Michelle supports her and supports the action she puts forward to departments to ensure they get done. So thanks to both of you in relation to that. I think the key things within the report, many of you will already be aware of Martin's Law. Councillors have had the opportunity to have a briefing on Martin's Law and the implications for us as in all of the roles, aforementioned roles, and obviously the planters in town and what that actually means. I think for the public, when they saw the planters, it was sort of like, why we've got planters like that? But it's the need for those things in terms of Martin's Law to protect our public spaces. We can see how important health and safety is in relation to protecting public spaces and some of the more recent terrorist attacks that there have been across the country. So Jo's work in that area has been absolutely fantastic, and she's been supporting a lot of local businesses as well. So I'm very grateful for that. I think one of the other things I'll pick up, not only in the that's conveyed in the report, but also from the health and safety working group that I attend, and the training I've personally seen from being a paid subscriber and having attended one of the training programs, is the amount of training that have now been given to department heads and to staff in terms of health and safety and their responsibilities within the council, and that has been a really marked progress. So much so, even as a tenant of the council, I've seen the practices and rehearsal drills, which have really stepped up a gear. So, you know, I'm really happy to present the report before you. And the one piece of work that's still ongoing that I'm really keen to, Margaret will benefit Margaret's field of work, is the work in relation to the protective clothing for our environmental health team. And Jo has been piloting with a number of suppliers different types of protective equipment, which I think is a really good, rather than just buying stuff, we're testing what we're providing our staff with now as well, which is a really good piece of work, and I get regular updates on that. So there is a request for money within the report, and I know Cabinet colleagues will probably ask me where that money is coming from, so I'm going to answer you now before the question comes in. So recommendation 2.2, there is a request for £25,000 to be allocated to Martin's Law. That is anticipated to come from the underspend or contingency that we've already assigned. So this won't be additional spend that will appear on the budget for next year. This is within underspend from this year. Okay, and I'm happy to therefore propose recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2. Thank you.
But very happy to second the proposal as written. Can I just quickly ask, the £25,000, is that a recurring item or is that a one-off?
It's a one-off.
I do want to echo what you said about the officer, that we've got a lot of officers here who do work underneath the radar, and every now and again we get a report like this and it sort of bubbles through. And I know that the officer did a lot of really good work during the Christmas festivities, where it was quite difficult, challenging, nothing wrong or bad about it, but you know, a lot of people in one place, a lot of equipment about, and she and other officers were definitely on the ball. It was very impressive. So thank you to them. Any other yes, Sharon.
Referring to the Martin's Law, and I feel for Jo because she's been brilliant. We put the planters in town, as you know. We've mended the barriers. We've got the barriers ready to be locked. The frustration is these barriers are not getting locked, so we're not protecting the public. That when it's pedestrian only between 10 and 3, and to support Jo to get this done, we need to get that done, one for the residents and two because of Jo's hard work. So if that could please get pushed through, because you know it's a frustration.
Thanks, Chair. We had a licensing, the taxi meeting last week with the chair of licensing and that, and this was brought up by some taxi drivers about the town. Vehicles going through the town at night, marketplace, going wrong way up marketplace, taxi drivers. So I did mention that then these barriers are going to be locked all the time. So sooner the better so they're not being locked all the time.
10 till 3 is the only pedestrian time in the town centre. Any other you can drive through with your vehicle the right way.
Yeah, the problem is it's a highway matter, so we can't do that. That would be overruled by the County Council, the Highways Authority. 'Cause it-
Gotcha. So is that 10 in the morning till to what time do you say?
10 till 3. You can do your deliveries or drive through before 10 and after 3.
Sorry, Chair, sorry to come back in. So I thought the idea was these barriers and new barriers and locks, that the emergency services could get through these barriers. To me, I feel that they should be locked all the time, 10 till 3. You know, but I think they should be locked after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, shut. Because it was agreed that the emergency services would have access to get into the marketplace.
And Chair, just come back on that. So Joe has designed a service level agreement with Melton Mowbray Town Estate, who have agreed to take responsibility for the gate. I believe my understanding is that service level agreement is with the legal team, just to get it finalised. This is about the operational opening and shutting of the gates and who's taking responsibility. So we're at that final stage for that bit. That's around deliveries and things. The emergency services have been provided with the code. So when the gates are shut, should the emergency services need to get into the town area, they have got those codes to be able to access it. So it doesn't rely on anybody from the council. They're recorded on the phone systems for police, fire, ambulance. So that will automatically come up. We do have to restrict access when lots of people are in town, hence the gates being locked at certain times. But then I assume that highways laws will come in outside of those times. You'll know from the variants you had to get on the licence, didn't you, for traders. So yeah, it is a difficult one outside of those hours because it's a highways issues, not MBC.
Some clarity here. Those roads are highways, full stop. The fact that we have temporary closures is an addition to that fact that you have to get permission for. So that if you like, the default is that they are highway. That's it and all about it. So if there's a desire to extend the closure periods because of what you were saying, Steve, we'd have to go back to that as a matter of policy and discuss it. But what we're talking about here is, if you like, the operational side of it as it is. Is that a fair statement? Yeah, of course you can, Steve. Come back in.
My concerns, Chair, is how do we stand then if taxis are going up the wrong way at 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock and they run somebody over? Where will it rely on? Will it come back to us as a council, as it's taxis?
No, if the highway is open and a driver is going up the wrong way, that's a police matter. So I think perhaps we should return to this as a separate issue, a very important issue, because if people are misbehaving at night, we've got CCTV in the town. Perhaps we should be taking some action there. I mean, you know, they will cheat. They will go up the wrong way. So some people will, won't they? So I think it's an important issue, Steve. We should come back to it, if that's okay. Yeah, but if we can make a note of that, and then we'll all, and I think perhaps the operational side we should all have a good look at, see it. We need clarity, so we all know what's actually approved and agreed, and who's doing what. Because sometimes you get these rumours going around. Yes, Pat, do you want to pop in?
Yeah, I was in town yesterday and there was a huge lorry, not one of the great giant lorries, a really, it was a lorry, and it was backing in. It was coming from the, the junction. How can I? In it was backing in towards the marketplace, and it was making a noise and was being driven very, very slowly. But obviously, it should not have been there. It should not have been doing that. But I'm not too happy about the enforcement that could go on and doesn't go on in town. Thank you.
Town, and we've got Anglo-Saxon roads, and people have to deliver, and then there's road works and water works. You know, there's always a little bit of byplay. Yeah, so a bit of that, isn't there? So, but we can't cure it all tonight. I think we've moved the policy. I think we should move on. So those in favour of the policy? Okay, this is the sorry, we're noting, sorry,
No,
noting
so
the
it's an
update.
update, Chair, with recommendations to note and to support the release of the 25,000 for Martin's Law.
Could this information include the details of Martin's Law? Because I had to go on the internet to see what exactly it was. Thank you.
We could do with a good summary, couldn't we, of Martin's Law? Yeah, okay. So do you want to come back, Sarah?
I'm just going to say maybe an update in the members' briefing at some point in relation to Martin's Law. That'd be.
So we'll now move to a vote. Those in favour of the recommendation. Thank you. That's carried. So we're now on to our favourite one, item 9, the disposal of garages. Now who's leading on this? Is it you? Is that me? Oh, Michelle, you'll be doing this then.
Thank you. So long awaited, I know you've been keen to see this report come forward. So this report seeks approval of the principles set out in the report for disposing of or repurposing underutilised garage sites within the Housing Revenue account. And important to note that this directly supports a policy you've already approved around the HRA asset disposal policy. So you approved that back in September 2024. So just a reminder of some of the context, we have 368 garages, of which 112 are leased. We have done a lot of work around public consultation and engagement to understand the level of demand for garages, and that has enabled us to see that there are some sites that would be worthy of disposal so that we could do alternative things with them. Where sites were to be retained or should be retained, we will invest in those, and you will see within our asset management plan we continue to make budget provision to do that. What we do have a number of sites that are low demand or require significant investment, and that means that retaining them would be uneconomical. And we also have some land where we do sometimes get requests for us to sell land to residents for them to add to their own assets. That means that there are a number of challenges. Sometimes the ongoing maintenance is costly, inefficient, and often there isn't strategic value for retaining them. So we do need to have a plan. But our work has identified that we really need to do that on a case-by-case basis, so a site-by-site basis. The opportunities that come from disposal are that we can generate capital receipts that we can then use to acquire or invest in housing. We can repurpose land for development. We can partner with others, and we can support our priorities around improving homes and communities. And I know a number of members have raised with us as officers, and I'm sure with you as a cabinet, that where we do have unused garage sites, they can be particularly problematic and unsightly. So it is important that we start to move forward. So for each of the sites, the team will work through a pro forma that will allow them to assess the best option for each of them. That might result in us retaining sites where there is strong demand, redeveloping them subject to affordability and viability, repurposing them in some cases, or just disposing of those to generate a receipt, as I say. So what we're asking of you this evening is to approve in principle the principles of the policy position, and then the team have committed to start to bring forward those recommendations on a case-by-case basis using the pro forma as Appendix A, and the commitment from the team is that they will start to come forward by the end of January. So PIP, you will start to see them come forward in tranches for your consideration. That's all from me, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's very much horses for courses. And it's putting right something that's been wrong for a very long time. Some of these garages are shocking, dilapidated, and they're traps for vandalism and, drugs and all sorts. So the fact that we're dealing with it's been a long time coming, but we're getting on top of it, and that's the important thing. And I'm sure that Councillor Thwaites will be delighted. Pat, did you want to contribute?
Yeah, the fact that they need over £1 million is shocking, absolutely shocking. But we are where we are. I'm glad it's been looked at site by site, because they are all different. And when you mention consultation, I hope you just you don't just consult with council tenants, because there are people outside, and maybe we've got people who bought their properties which were council, but we've also got others who are living in houses and dwellings which have always been private, but they too would like one of those garages. So I hope that those neighbours are also being consulted, and not just the council tenants. And yeah, for the level of demand, because I know, like in Valley Road, there are places where people want a garage. Sometimes it's just to store things. It's not always for a vehicle, but they should have a fair chance as well to acquire one. But and it's odd that the demand is so low. 112 out of 368. That is, to my mind, that's strange. That's strange. But anyway, the main thing is that everyone is consulted and not just council tenants. And at some time, can we please be looking at the difference in the charge for these garages between a council tenant and somebody who's not a council tenant? Many thanks.
I think some of the problem is these garages are too small for the modern day cars. So that is a bit problematic as well. Agree with Pat about, I think we've already done the work with the tenants about the garages. Also, there's rats, antisocial behaviour and stuff where some of them at the most derelict because they've been derelict for so many years. We also know how long it takes for sales to go through. So I think the sooner the better, because we want residents to, you know, benefit from the money being spent on things that they want and need. So, you know, I think the sooner we do it, the better.
Michelle, where we market, I'm sure you'll pick this up, but where we market consult, be good to hear how we're going to do that, because picking up the points made over here that we want as many people to be aware of it as possible. So some sort of comms approach, but you can pick that up as a detail. We don't need a policy decision tonight. That's right. Did you want to come back straight away?
I just wanted to give some assurance of the work we've already done. So we've already done some consultation work. That's one of the reasons this has taken longer to come to you this evening, because we wanted to understand the level of demand to help us start to plan our investment. So just some reassurance for you, Councillor Cumbers, that wasn't just for council tenants, that was an open consultation, because we do recognise that non-tenants also want to rent some garages. And we've also got on our website, so in terms of transparency, the outcome of that consultation. So I feel that we've satisfied that requirement already. The recommendation, if I just double check it, I think requires us, for any of the proposals that come forward, we will engage with the local ward members so we can understand if there are things that we're not seeing or we're not hearing, or if a ward member tells us that they're aware of demand in an area that we might not have taken into consideration. We can look at that on a case-by-case basis, but I would be reluctant to initiate more consultation each time, because it would slow us down, because we've already done the work. So that would be my proposed way forward. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Margaret.
Whilst I agree with the garage sites, I think that's a really good use of them. If we're not using them, let's make the most of that the area they cover. One thing I am concerned about is surplus land, and it's mentioned on this report on page 393. Areas of land next to existing council houses could potentially be developed into further housing. Now, when we design these developments, we include green areas, and we know how much we do not like green areas being taken over by more concrete and bricks. So I'm very concerned about this. We have to fight that at planning committee. I know we've had umpteen debates, heated debates sometimes, about green areas within developments being developed. And I personally, I really don't agree with it. That green area, that land is there to relieve the brick form on large developments. And I cannot support tearing that up to build more houses, especially in view that, in fact, we've just agreed the 3 items I had, and it's all about green areas as well, to relieve the brick form, to absorb air quality, the air quality strategy. Everything helps to relieve that. And I don't think the council should be looking at building on green areas within our development.
I think that's a good point, and we're doing it, going into battle over a famous piece of land at Navigation Close. So I think, as portfolio holder with my colleague, we need some assurance to Cabinet that actually we will look at these particular suggestions very closely on their merits, and we will be veering towards retaining green space, not getting rid of it because it's money making. I think the emphasis in this paper for me is yes, we'll do, is that the fact that the garages are not green space, and that we need to get on with that job. Now, is it Clive needs to come in? Yes, please, Clive, do come in.
I fully understand the points being made by members regarding green space, etc. But I think members have to be careful not to confuse the planning aspects of this with the disposal in principle. Both processes have a for both aspects there's a process for this. It's a proposal which has to be developed in consultation with the portfolio holder and ward member. So that would have to take it into account from a housing perspective, and obviously the planning matter is for the planning committee to consider. So whilst they're very similar and they might be linked and cover common issues, obviously this isn't about a planning determination, this is about a policy decision on disposals. So I think members have to be careful not to bring in planning considerations at this stage.
I take the point, Clive, because that would, if we took a decision, that would be predetermination. But of course, if it was our land and the Cabinet was recommending it, we would have to recuse ourselves anyway. But we understand the point you made, Clive, and we'll be wary of that one, but also wary of not disposing of green land precipitously, shall we say, and without due consideration of the wider context for everybody. So, Steve, did you want to say anything on this?
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy with the report, and like you said, we've got to make sure, and I'm glad it's come forward. It's too long waiting for these garages to be sorted out, because some of them are a mess, and I totally agree with the report, what Michelle and her colleagues have done.
Well, I think we've probably given that a fair hearing. I'm looking at members. Anybody want to come back? Okay, I think yes, please, Sharon.
To Margaret's point, I think every site that needs to be disposed of would be different, because some would have your green space and some won't. Some are already concrete blocks, but they're an eyesore and a mess, dangerous and stuff like that. So I think each plot should be, case by case that's talked about.
I shall move the recommendations then to approve and to delegate as written on the order paper. Oh, sorry, go on, Sharon.
You say delegate, but do you mean it will still go through to ward councillors and talk to about disposal through the Cabinet, or are you just saying you're going to make that decision?
Ward councillors don't make a decision, that they have no executive responsibility, but because it's in their ward, they'll be consulted with before a decision is made. Now, under the rules here, it's delegated to the director in consultation with myself and therefore Steve. If we felt that there was something really untoward, we would naturally consult with the Cabinet, before anything was done. But I think we move forward on the basis that most of this will be pretty routine and we need to get on with the job of doing it. But if at any stage a ward councillor says, oh, hang on a minute, I'm really against this, because then we will pause. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But it's
not so much the ward council. I'm just thinking, like Margaret's concern, if people were to make that decision on their own, I know that gets delegated, but that's what we're voting on. I'm just
this is a procedural thing, really, because obviously people, the ward members will be aware and they will have the same sentiments as Margaret, I would have thought. But if you want Margaret as portfolio holder to be linked with this, happy with that. There's no question of anyone being excluded. Do you want to be consulted on this?
My main concern is just the green areas. If it's sort of land that's not used, it's tarmacked over, etc. That's fine. But the green areas are extremely important to large developments.
Well, the way delegation works is that the officer informs whoever the appropriate portfolio holder is, which is me, that I want to do this. Is that okay? So if it's a green area, I will pause and have a discussion with the deputy leader. Okay. Yes, please do, Ed.
Yeah, I think just to be clear, what we're seeking is clarity on who will make the decision and who formally has to be consulted with. But there's nothing to stop you informally consulting with other members of cabinet to seek a view on particular matters and taking stock on those if there is an issue. So that again is the check and balance that I think is being requested. Yeah. So it's clarity, but there's also the opportunity to discuss more widely. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Yes, Pat, go on.
Ward councillors, because I've got an issue with some garages, but not on my ward. But it's a road that I'm frequently sort of going through, and I would like my opinion to be heard. But I'm not the ward councillor.
I think the problem with that is that if we then open it up to to satisfy you, it would have to be all 28 councillors.
But only those who've got an opinion. I haven't got an opinion about any others.
What I'm saying is, Pat, is that you'd have to tell everyone, because I don't know if anyone's got an opinion about a particular garage or piece of road unless they tell me, do I? So to understand whether anybody has an opinion, every councillor would have to be told this is the proposal. Otherwise, how are they going to know?
Or who could I tell about my concerns about a particular area? Who could I tell?
Well, as it stands at the moment, it would be an officer or me, but you haven't told me about this one so far. So what we're positing is the notion that the officers are coming up with a recommendation to, say, dispose of a garage in a road that you go down. So you want to be consulted before the decision is made, right? No, hear me out.
I just like to give my opinion on something.
This is I don't quite know the difference between consulting and you giving your opinion. Yeah. I mean, if you want to give an opinion, you've got to know that there's something to give an opinion about. So I've got to tell you that I'm proposing to sell this mug, right? And unless I tell you, you won't know, and I won't know that you've got an opinion. So what do you want to change in the procedure to do it?
I don't know. This particular thing, I've had a sort of an opinion about it before there was ever discussion about them being sold. It's just a difficult site.
I would say to you is this: as portfolio holder and leader of the council, if you want to tell me which area you're talking about, we'll take it into account.
Fine, thank you. Thanks.
Is that all right?
Yep, that's fine.
So, please do, Clive.
Sorry, apologies, the sound cut out then, but I think you've covered the point, because I was going to say that you could prospectively raise any concerns you have that can be passed to the officer when developing proposals. So, that's probably the easiest thing to address that matter. But I think you covered it in your response, Pip.
Thank you very much, Clive. So, you happy then, Pat? Good. Okay. Anything else from anybody? Go on, Sharon.
So are we going to add this bit in that Ed's just said that could be added into it? What we're voting on?
Sorry, just to be clear, I wasn't advocating we change the recommendation, because I think the recommendation follows kind of standard procedural practice in terms of who is responsible. So there needs to be clarity on who is going to take the decision. So that's absolutely clear. My point was that prior to confirming any decision formally, the leader, what I've heard this evening, has given assurance that he will take soundings on anything that any other member has a concern about. And obviously most members of cabinet who wish to raise things proactively or as a matter that may be considered contentious comes forward. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily advocate changing the formal recommendation, but yeah, certainly we can capture in the minutes the reference to the desire to consult as widely as is reasonably possible with members who have an interest in a particular site to make sure that we get the best and right outcome, which is what I think the leader has described this evening.
Those in favour of the recommendations, please show. Any against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Yeah. That's the end of the meeting.